A little girl I had never seen before walked up to me in the middle of a crowded mall and pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand. When I opened it, my blood went cold. The note said, "That man is following you. Don't look. Go with my mom." I looked up and saw a woman standing near the store entrance, nodding at me with fear in her eyes. They walked me to security. 5 minutes later, I found out just how close I came to becoming another missing person statistic. My name is Ren Holloway. I'm 24 years old, and I work as a kindergarten teacher in Tampa, Florida. I moved here from Georgia right after college because I wanted to prove to myself that I could make it on my own. I live alone in a small apartment, I pay my own bills, and I've always been proud of my independence. But that independence almost cost me everything. I've always been the kind of person who sees the good in people. My mom says I'm too trusting. My younger brother Colton says I'm naive. Maybe they're right. Because on that Saturday afternoon, I had no idea that a predator had been watching me from the moment I stepped out of my car. And if it wasn't for a 7-year-old girl and her incredibly brave mother, I might not be here to tell you this story. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love reading every single one. Now, let me tell you exactly what happened that day. It was a Saturday in late January, and I had the whole day to myself. The school week had been exhausting. Teaching kindergarten is wonderful, but it drains every ounce of energy you have. By Friday afternoon, I was running on fumes. So when Saturday morning came, I decided to do something just for me. I was going to spend the day at Westfield Citrus Park Mall, one of my favorite places to wander around and relax. I had a reason to shop that day. My best friend from college, a girl named Petra, had just gotten engaged, and her engagement party was the following weekend. I needed a new dress, something cute but not too fancy. I also wanted to browse some home decor stores because my apartment still felt a little empty, like it was missing personality. I figured I would make a whole afternoon of it. Shopping, maybe some lunch at the food court, just a nice, peaceful day. My mom called me that morning while I was getting ready. Her name is Loretta, and she calls me every single day without fail, sometimes twice. She worries about me living alone in a city where I don't have any family nearby. I tell her I'm fine, that Tampa is safe, that I know how to take care of myself. She always sighs and says, "I just have a bad feeling sometimes." I used to roll my eyes when she said that. I don't anymore. That morning she asked me what my plans were. I told her I was going to the mall. She told me to be careful, to keep my purse close, to park near the entrance where there were lots of people. I promised her I would. I told her I loved her. She told me to call her when I got home. That was our routine. I drove to the mall around noon. The weather was beautiful, sunny and warm with a light breeze. I parked my car on the second level of the parking garage, close to the elevator like my mom always told me. I grabbed my purse, locked the doors, and headed inside. The mall was busy, but not packed. There were families pushing strollers, groups of teenagers laughing near the fountain, couples walking hand in hand. It felt normal and safe. I put my headphones in and started listening to a podcast. It was one of those true crime shows I'm obsessed with, the kind where they investigate cold cases and interview detectives. I know it sounds strange, but I find them fascinating. I like trying to figure out what happened before the host reveals the answer. Looking back now, there's a dark irony in the fact that I was listening to a story about a woman who went missing while a man was actively following me through the mall. I browsed through a few clothing stores first. I tried on maybe 5 or 6 dresses before I found the one I wanted. It was pale blue with little white flowers on it, and it hit just above my knee. It was perfect for Petra's party. I paid for it and moved on to the home goods store, where I found a candle that smelled like vanilla and brown sugar. I added that to my bag and decided I deserved a treat. I went to the food court and ordered a soft pretzel with cheese dip. I found a table near the window and sat down to eat. The sun was streaming through the glass, warming my face. I scrolled through my phone and texted Petra a picture of the dress. She sent back a row of heart emojis and told me I was going to look amazing. I smiled and took another bite of my pretzel. I had no idea that a man was standing behind a pillar about 30 feet away, watching me eat. I had no idea that he had been following me since the parking garage. I had no idea that he had a backpack full of things he planned to use on me. I was completely unaware, completely vulnerable, completely alone. But someone else had noticed. Someone else was watching too. And that someone was about to save my life. After I finished my pretzel, I gathered my shopping bags and decided to check out a shoe store on the second level. There was a sale going on, and I thought maybe I could find some sandals to go with my new dress. I threw away my trash, adjusted my purse on my shoulder, and started walking toward the escalator. That's when I felt it for the first time. A strange prickle at the back of my neck, like someone was watching me. It's hard to explain, but if you've ever experienced it, you know exactly what I mean. It's this uncomfortable feeling that makes you want to turn around, but you don't know why. Your body senses something your eyes haven't seen yet. I glanced over my shoulder, but didn't notice anything unusual. Just shoppers going about their day. A mom pushing a stroller. A group of teenage boys laughing at something on a phone. An older couple holding hands near the jewelry store. Nothing seemed out of place. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I had been listening to too many crime podcasts. My imagination was working overtime. I stepped onto the escalator and rode it up to the second floor. The shoe store was near the top, just past a makeup kiosk where a woman was offering free samples. I walked past her with a polite smile and entered the store. It was bright and colorful inside, with rows of shoes organized by style and size. A pop song was playing softly over the speakers. Everything seemed perfectly normal, but the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger. I walked to the clearance section at the back of the store and started looking through the sandals. I picked up a pair with little gold straps and checked the price tag. I was trying to focus on shopping, but my mind kept drifting back to that uncomfortable sensation. I felt like I was being watched, like someone's eyes were locked on me even though I couldn't see them. I put the sandals back and moved to a different rack. That's when I felt a small tug on my jacket. I looked down and saw a little girl standing beside me. She was maybe 7 or 8 years old, with dark braided pigtails and a bright pink jacket. Her face was serious, much too serious for a child her age. She didn't smile. She didn't say hello. She just looked up at me with these big brown eyes and held out a folded piece of paper. I was confused. I thought maybe she was lost or looking for her mom. I took the paper from her hand and unfolded it. The note was written in a child's handwriting, with some of the letters backwards and the spelling a little off, but the message was clear. It said, "That man is following you. Don't look. Go with my mom." My heart stopped. I read the note again, hoping I had misunderstood, hoping it was some kind of joke, but the little girl's face told me everything I needed to know. This was not a game. I looked up from the paper and saw a woman standing near the entrance of the store. She was in her late 30s, with shoulder-length brown hair and a navy blue jacket. Her expression was tense, her jaw tight, her eyes locked on mine. She nodded once, slowly and deliberately, like she was confirming what the note said. Then she gestured for me to come toward her. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to turn around and look. I wanted to see who was behind me. I wanted to know who had been following me. But the note told me not to look, and something in my gut told me to trust these strangers. So I didn't turn around. The little girl took my hand, her small fingers wrapped around mine, and she started pulling me gently toward her mother. I let her lead me. My legs felt weak, like they might give out at any moment. My shopping bags felt impossibly heavy in my other hand. The distance from the back of the store to the entrance couldn't have been more than 50 feet, but it felt like a mile. I kept my eyes forward. I didn't look back, but I could feel someone behind me. I could feel their presence, like a weight pressing against my spine. Whoever was following me, they were close. They were watching, and they were waiting. When I reached the woman at the entrance, she put her arm around my shoulders and leaned close to my ear. Her voice was calm, but urgent. She said, "Stay with me. Don't look back. We're going to security." I nodded, unable to speak. The little girl was still holding my hand, and I squeezed it tight, like she was my lifeline. We walked out of the shoe store together, and I had never been more terrified in my entire life. The woman guided me away from the shoe store with her arms still around my shoulders. She walked with purpose, her steps quick but steady. She didn't look panicked, but I could feel the tension in her body. The little girl stayed on my other side, still holding my hand like she had known me her whole life. To anyone watching, we probably looked like a family, a mother, an aunt, and a daughter out for a day of shopping. That was exactly the point. Once we were a safe distance from the store, the woman leaned close and spoke quietly. She said her name was Nadine, and her daughter was Bria. She told me she had been watching the man follow me for the past 20 minutes. She first noticed him in the food court while I was eating my pretzel. He was standing behind a pillar, not buying anything, not looking at his phone, just staring at me. She thought it was strange, so she kept an eye on him. When I got up to leave, the man followed. He stayed about 10 feet behind me, matching my pace exactly. When I stopped to look at something, he stopped too. When I took the escalator to the second floor, he took it right after me. When I entered the shoe store, he lingered outside the entrance, pretending to look at his phone. But Nadine could see his eyes. They weren't on the phone. They were on me. I asked her why she didn't just call security herself. She said she thought about it, but she was afraid the man would notice and disappear before they could catch him. Or worse, that he would realize someone was on to him and do something desperate. She decided the safest thing was to get me away from him first, then report him together. I asked her how she knew what to do. She told me she worked as a victim advocate at a domestic violence shelter. Her job was to help women who had been stalked, harassed, and abused. She had seen predatory behavior hundreds of times. She knew the warning signs better than anyone. And this man, she said, had every single one. Nadine explained the plan as we walked. We were going to take the elevator down to the first floor, because it was more enclosed than the escalator. We would stay in the middle of the crowd at all times. We would not run or draw attention to ourselves. We would walk calmly and quickly to the security office near the main entrance. She told me to keep my eyes forward and not to look back, no matter what. If I turned around, the man would know we were onto him. I nodded and tried to focus on putting one foot in front of the other. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My palms were sweating, and I was gripping Bria's hand probably tighter than I should have. But the little girl didn't complain. She just looked up at me and gave me a small smile, like she was trying to tell me everything was going to be okay. We reached the elevator, and Nadine pressed the button. The doors opened almost immediately, and she ushered Bria and me inside. She stepped in last, positioning herself near the buttons with her back against the wall. As the doors began to close, I saw a flash of movement in my peripheral vision. Someone was walking quickly toward the elevator. I didn't turn to look, but my whole body went rigid. The doors closed just in time. The elevator started moving down, and Nadine let out a small breath of relief. She looked at me and said, "We're almost there. You're doing great." I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream, but I held it together because I knew we weren't safe yet. When the elevator doors opened on the first floor, Nadine took the lead. She walked us through the crowd toward the main entrance. I could see the security office up ahead, a small room with glass windows, and a sign that said, "Mall Security," above the door. It had never looked so beautiful to me before. We walked through the door, and Nadine immediately started talking to the guard behind the desk. She spoke quickly but clearly, explaining what she had seen, describing the man in detail. I just stood there shaking, holding on to Bria like my life depended on it, because at that point, I was pretty sure it did. The security guard behind the desk was a man in his 40s, with a shaved head and a calm, serious demeanor. His name tag said, Officer Derek Loomis. He listened carefully as Nadine described everything she had witnessed. He didn't interrupt or ask unnecessary questions. He just nodded and typed notes into his computer while she spoke. When Nadine finished, Officer Loomis asked her to describe the man in detail. She said he was a white male, probably late 30s, wearing a gray hoodie and dark jeans. He had a baseball cap pulled low over his face, and he was carrying a black backpack. She said he was average height and build, Nothing that would make him stand out in a crowd. That was probably intentional. Predators don't want to be noticed. Officer Loomis pulled up the mall's security camera footage on his computer monitor. He asked Nadine to help him identify the man on screen. Within minutes, they found him. There he was, clear as day, following me through the mall. The footage showed him entering the building shortly after I did. It showed him standing behind the pillar in the food court, watching me eat. It showed him riding the escalator 10 feet behind me. It showed him lingering outside the shoe store. His eyes locked on me through the glass. I felt sick watching it. Seeing myself on that screen, completely unaware of the danger I was in, made me want to throw up. I had been so oblivious, so vulnerable. If Nadine hadn't been paying attention, I would have walked right out of that mall and into his trap. Officer Loomis picked up his radio and called for backup. He gave a description of the man and his last known location. 2 other security guards responded and headed toward the food court area where the cameras showed him standing near a pretzel stand. I watched on the monitor as they approached him. At first, the man tried to walk away casually, like he was just another shopper minding his own business. But when one of the guards called out to him, he froze. They brought him back to the security office. I didn't want to see him, but I couldn't look away. He walked through the door with a guard on each side, his head down and his hands in his pockets. He looked so ordinary, so unremarkable. You would never look at him twice on the street. That's what made it so terrifying. Officer Loomis told me to stay in the back room while they waited for the police to arrive. Nadine and Bria stayed with me. Bria climbed onto the chair next to mine and leaned her head against my arm. I put my hand on her back and whispered, "Thank you." She looked up at me and said, "My mom says we have to help people when they're in trouble." I almost broke down crying right there. The Tampa police arrived within 10 minutes. 2 officers came into the security office and took over the situation. They handcuffed the man and searched his backpack. What they found inside made everyone in the room go silent. There was a roll of duct tape, a handful of plastic zip ties, a hunting knife with a 6-inch blade, and a small bottle of chloroform. He had everything he needed to abduct someone. He had everything he needed to abduct me. But that wasn't all. At the bottom of his backpack, the officers found a folder containing printed photographs of 3 different women. I didn't recognize any of them. They were strangers, just like I would have been to anyone who found my photo in that folder. The police later told me that 2 of those women had filed stalking reports in the past month. They had no idea they were being hunted. A detective came to speak with me after they took the man away. He told me his name was Gerald Fenton. He was 38 years old and had a criminal record that included assault and attempted kidnapping. He had been released from prison 8 months earlier and was already under investigation for suspicious activity near college campuses in the area. The detective looked me in the eyes and said something I will never forget. He said, "If that woman hadn't stepped in, we would probably be looking for you right now instead of talking to you." I finally let myself cry. Nadine wrapped her arms around me and held me tight while I sobbed into her shoulder. Bria hugged my legs and told me I was safe now, and for the first time since I opened that note, I actually believed it. I sat in that security office for another hour after the police took Gerald Fenton away. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face on that security monitor. I saw him following me through the mall, watching me, waiting for the right moment. I kept thinking about what would have happened if Nadine hadn't noticed. I kept thinking about that backpack full of duct tape and zip ties and chloroform. I kept thinking about how close I came to disappearing. The first call I made was to my mom. My fingers were trembling so badly I could barely dial her number. When she answered, I couldn't even get the words out. I just started crying. She knew immediately that something was wrong. She kept saying my name over and over, asking me what happened, begging me to tell her I was okay. When I finally managed to explain everything, she broke down too. I could hear her sobbing on the other end of the line, saying, "Thank God," over and over again. She booked a flight to Tampa that same night. She landed the next morning and came straight to my apartment. When I opened the door and saw her standing there, I fell into her arms like I was 5 years old again. She held me for a long time without saying anything. She just stroked my hair and let me cry. My brother Colton called an hour later. His voice was shaking when he told me he loved me. He said he was never letting me go anywhere alone again. I didn't argue with him. Before I left the mall that day, I exchanged phone numbers with Nadine. I hugged her so tight I thought I might never let go. I told her I didn't know how to thank her for what she did. She just smiled and said, "You don't have to thank me. I did what anyone should do." But that's the thing. Not everyone would have done what she did. Most people would have looked the other way. Most people would have told themselves it wasn't their business. Nadine chose to pay attention. She chose to act. And that choice saved my life. I knelt down and hugged Bria next. I told her she was the bravest little girl I had ever met. She smiled shyly and said, "I was a little scared to give you the note." I told her that being scared and doing it anyway is what makes someone truly brave. She seemed to like that answer. She gave me one more hug before they left, and I watched them walk out of the security office together. I owed them everything. Gerald Fenton was charged with stalking, possession of weapons with intent to harm, and attempted kidnapping. During the investigation, police discovered that he owned a remote cabin in rural Georgia. They believe that's where he planned to take me. The two other women whose photos were found in his backpack were contacted by police and placed under protection. One of them later testified at his trial. She said she had felt like someone was watching her for weeks, but could never prove it. She had no idea how close she came to the same fate. Fenton was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 25 years in prison. I was in the courtroom when the judge read the verdict. Nadine was sitting beside me, holding my hand. When they took him away in handcuffs, I finally felt like I could breathe again. My life changed completely after that day. I stopped wearing headphones in public. I started paying attention to my surroundings everywhere I went. I took a self-defense class and learned how to protect myself. I stopped assuming that bad things only happen to other people, because now I know the truth. Bad things can happen to anyone. The only difference is whether someone is paying attention. A year after the incident, I started volunteering at the domestic violence shelter where Nadine works. I help women who have been stalked, harassed, and abused. I share my story with them so they know they're not alone. I tell them that safety sometimes comes from the most unexpected places: a stranger in a store, a little girl with a piece of paper, someone who refuses to look the other way. Nadine and I are still close. We have dinner together at least once a month, and Bria always asks to sit next to me. She's 8 now, and she wants to be a police officer when she grows up. She says she wants to catch bad guys and help people like her mom helped me. I told her she already is a hero. She always has been. I think about that Saturday afternoon all the time. I think about how I walked into that mall completely unaware that a predator was tracking my every move. I think about how I almost walked out of that mall and into his trap. And I think about a 7-year-old girl who was brave enough to hand a stranger a note that said 5 simple words. That man is following you. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: pay attention to the people around you. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. And if you see someone in danger, do something. Don't assume someone else will help. Don't tell yourself it's not your business. You might be the only thing standing between a stranger and the worst moment of their life. Nadine didn't know me. Bria didn't know me, but they saved me anyway. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the kind of person who would do the same. If this story touched you, make sure to subscribe to my channel and leave a comment telling me what you would have done if you were in Nadine's shoes. I read every single comment, and your story might inspire someone else to be brave.